As I told you, we're going to start getting into more video clips, quotes, things of that nature. Some of what we're going to have to really be paying attention to here is that all of the things that we have been learning are going to come together. What I mean by that is when we were discussing the attributes of God, the incommunicative attributes of God, omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, things of that nature, are going to work in conjunction with the other deceptive characteristics of Satan. As we learn these things, you're going to see how they work together. If you'll remember out of Daniel, he makes the statement that through peace he will destroy many. And you'll see that concept of peace will arise. At the very end of the last video, if you'll remember correctly, I left off with the statement from Rockefeller that stated that they were on the verge of doing something great and good, and it would bring peace to the world. Well, it wouldn't bring peace, at least not the type of peace that comes from knowing God. It would bring the type of peace that they think would eliminate everything that is in opposition to them. And so we went through that video that was emphasizing the new world order, the new world order, and the new world order. But does that necessarily mean the one world government? And so what we're going to do is take a look at a few quotes here and see that that is exactly the case.
Here's an interesting quote from Zbigniew Brzezinski. "We cannot leap into world government through one quick step. The precondition for eventual and genuine globalization is progressive regionalization, because by that we move toward larger, more stable, more cooperative units."
You'll notice he makes the statement there with regards to there being a greater number of units, or there would have to be a number of units that would contribute to the capacity and the capability of controlling large number of people. Remember, 10 toes, 10 horns. Always keep that in mind, that these individuals will be grouped together as a conglomerate with the intent that they will rule the world, but have to do so in a manner that puts different individuals in charge of different portions of the geography of the earth. Let's continue to move on with this thought of the one world government.
We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries.
Okay, so you'll see here that tied into their deception, or the capacity to be able to deceive, is also the thought that the media played a role in it and is continuing to play a role within it. The other thing that we would want to pay close attention to here is that it says that a world banking system, or bankers plural, throughout the world would be able to have greater control and manage, if you will, the world systems. And so that ultimately would be the goal. Remember what we had talked about before. From those 10 toes, or 10 horns, which would be 10 kings, they do not have to be presidents. They don't have to be dictators. They don't have to be political world leaders. They would be manipulated by those who are in financial control of the world, and therefore be able to pull the strings as necessary to get those leaders to move in a direction that would be compliant to what those leaders would desire.
Here's a quote from Larry McDonald, who states the drive of the Rockefellers and their allies is to create a one-world government combining supercapitalism and communism under the same tent, all under their control. Do I mean conspiracy? Yes, I do. I am convinced there is such a plot, international in scope, generations old in planning, and incredibly evil in intent.
You'll notice that he has said that this goal for the one world government is something that has been brewing for quite some time. Also, something that is interesting that we are really seeing come to light right now is the communism and capitalism conjoined. And they are looking at China as being the role model for what this one world government will look like. Why is that so significant? Well, communism, Chinese communism, requires of those who are part of it to have such a devotion to it that it is more important than their own life and their own prosperity and their own desires. Everything once given over to this level of communism means that I will sacrifice myself for the party. Do you see that level of commitment that is required of it is equal to that of what is intended for the commitment given to Jesus Christ? Jesus says that he who will come after me must carry his own cross. You must deny yourself. You must give up your life and surrender it to him. And within communism, you see that same level of commitment and that same level of self-sacrifice for the ultimate good, if you will, of this one particular godless group known as communism. And so he focuses his attention on that as being an issue and then goes even further by stating that it would be under their control and that it is international, one world, and that it is evil in its intent. It is evil in its intent, which would ultimately be the foundation for it, and that is that it is satanic in its nature.
Here's a quote from Pope John Paul II. By the end of this decade, we will live under the first one-world government that has ever existed in the Society of Nations, a government with absolute authority to decide the basic issues of human survival. One-world government is inevitable.
We shouldn't be shocked that we are seeing statements like this being made from what would be recognized as religious leaders. Because according to Revelation chapter 13, the one world leader will be supported by the false prophet. The false prophet will be a religious leader, and that religious leader will be encouraging and directing the world to worship the one world leader.
Here is a quote from George Soros. China must lead the New World Order, creating it, owning it, and supplanting the United States as the world's economic superpower.
You see from this quote here that Soros is making the statement that China, which is a communist party, communist controlled, is the one who would be given the directive, if you will, to step up and to lead the world into this new one world government mindset. A few things that stand out with regards to China as well is that China is really all about itself and its capital control and its social control over its people. They persecute the Uyghur Muslims. They persecute Christians. Anything that has to do with a god other than serving and worshiping and surrendering yourself to the Communist Party is recognized as a threat. They persecute Buddhists. They persecute anything that is underneath an institution of faith. Your faith, your commitment, expected to be given over to the Communist Party. It is waiting for, if you will, a one world leader to step into a role who is already going to be requiring that type of worship given over to themselves, and that is significant. There is a second point that must be made here with regards to this particular statement, and that is the supplanting of the United States as the primary leader in the world. If you take a country that was established on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, unalienable rights given by God, and you look at communist China, well, you are looking at the polar opposite. You are looking at a group of individuals who are so diametrically opposed to the things of God that you couldn't put a measuring stick against it to determine just how far they go. They are a godless people. It is the best way to state it. It is not intended to be offensive, it is intended to be descriptive. And so that is who they are. While we are on the subject of the United States, for many years, there have been individuals who said, where does the United States end up in prophecy? We don't see them around. I mean, you're talking about a country who is the dominant power in the world. And for decades, we have said that if the United States crumbles, it'll crumble from within. This role that China is playing is already significantly impacting the behavioral patterns, the society, and the culture of the United States. How so? For those of you who watch the news, Michael Flynn was brought up on false charges by the FBI, was arrested, and basically had his life destroyed. If you go back to the onset of what they believe the problem was, is that when he was taking over the position of Secretary of State, if I remember correctly, that he told Susan Rice on the way out that the Trump administration was going to focus its attentions on China. And once he put his emphasis, or openly stated the emphasis would be on China, they went after him. The United States government, the FBI, the CIA, the Democratic National Committee, and everybody went after on the basis of them focusing their attention upon China. We're now seeing within the news cycle that Joe Biden and his son Hunter have business dealings with China, that there are a number of issues that exist that are surrounding him and his relationship with China. Nancy Pelosi had a Chinese spy who was within her inner circle back in San Francisco, and she had to get rid of that individual because it was found out. Eric Swalwell, who is a congressman out of California, was dating a Chinese spy. They were saying that he didn't know about it, but he was introduced to that Chinese spy by Nancy Pelosi. The California Governor Newsom, when they needed personal protection equipment because of COVID-19, instead of going to a company in the United States that supplies PPE equipment, he signed a contract and paid more money for that same equipment from China. When I lived in the state of Nevada, if you go over to Spring Mountain, any of you that are familiar with the area or going to be driving through it, you'll know that there is a strong Asian influence on Spring Mountain. You can get some incredible Asian food there. But a Chinese company bought a large portion of that real estate in that area. And we're not just talking about 1 or 2 blocks, we're talking a large chunk of property. We'll find out more about this if I can introduce some video here by the end of this week. As I said, I'm trying to bring this particular series to a conclusion, but I want us to keep watching, and I don't want us to find ourselves in a state of deception. But China has purchased large swaths of land in Texas near, from what I understand, military bases, and they have actually put in landing strips on these pieces of property for who knows what reason. China is now working with Canada and sending over battalion force military units to train in Canada, so that they could learn how to fight in cold weather, in the snow. And Canada has welcomed them in. In turn, Canada has sent individuals to China so that they could learn how to use the media for propaganda and be able to destroy individuals that they did not see as beneficial to their culture, society, or maybe even political enemies. But these are things that are happening within our world right now between even the United States and China, the relationship that exists there.
David Rockefeller. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order.
All we need is the right major crisis. They have been looking for the right major crisis for quite some time. And as we had discussed in just the ending of the last video, they thought that the economic downturn was going to be able to provide that crisis for them. And they weren't able to take advantage of it. I think each one of these crises that arise, they get the opportunity to be able to take steps in the direction to fulfill what their ultimate goals are. But if you'll notice, they are looking for the right major crisis, and right now is one that they have created, and that would be the pandemic. It is the right major crisis in which they intend on making changes throughout the world. It isn't just the pandemic and getting a vaccination. It is the ability to change and usher in the new world order, which would be a one world government.
Here's a quote from Henry Kissinger. The plan? Today, Americans would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told there was an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will pledge with world leaders to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by their world government.
Basically, they have a complete understanding that if you can present individuals with something that scares them, that they will relinquish their rights, their freedoms, their liberties for a measurable amount of security. Interestingly, this flies in the face of a quote that comes from Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Those who are willing to give up their liberty for a piece of security will in the end find that they have neither." And that is exactly where we are right now. We're not headed there, we are there. This quote that comes from Henry Kissinger is not something that we are waiting to see happen. It's not something that we are on the horizon of. We are living it right now. Walk outside, look at how many people are wearing masks to stave off a crisis sickness, and they have already relinquished their freedoms. I hold back from using statements that are harsh. But the reality is we're seeing ignorance on parade. Individuals who lack the self-discipline and an ability to be able to just take a step back and say, I need to educate myself on this to find out whether or not this is true. We don't do that anymore. No, what we do is we wait for a media to tell us everything that we need to hear, and then we believe them completely and surrender ourselves to the knowledge that they are willing to distribute out. And we're going to get into the media, but we're not going to get into it in this video. Sheep. People are sheep. You must educate yourself. It will take a lot of energy. It's going to remove you from your comfort zone. The days of I'm going to go to work, come home, make plans for my kids to go to college, and prepare for my retirement and hope that I can squeeze in some vacations, those days don't exist. They are gone. They are never coming back. You can call me a liar when they do. It is over. It's over. We can hide our heads in the sand and pretend like it's not going to happen or that it's not happening, but the reality is that it is. I had a conversation with a young couple recently who are following the series. And because of my relationship with them, we've known each other for the past 20 years. And I would share things that were going on in the world. As far back as 7-8 years ago, we were having these conversations, and I said, this is coming. We are there. And we met with them just recently, over the last couple of weeks. And one of the things that was said was, I believed what you were saying, but I thought we were 20, 30, 40 years away from it. I didn't realize that it was this close. And I said, individuals such as myself and those who I communicate with, who are not just studying scripture, but are deeply involved in prophecy, we see this happening and unfolding. And now we're in a situation where people who thought that they had years ahead of them, that they could map out the rest of their life comfortably, are now finding out that no, it is at the door. Evil is at the door.
Here's a quote from Klaus Schwab on the pandemic. The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world.
If you were in question as to whether or not the pandemic is something that is planned and intended by others to utilize in such a manner as to control and develop a one world government, well, you're getting it from the horse's mouth. And this next clip is actually going to come directly from the World Economic Forum.
Here's the website for the World Economic Forum. You'll see under Agenda, now is the time for a great reset. Then they have this fancy little icon there, push to reset the world. And you'll notice that it is underneath the World Economic Forum for COVID Action Platform. If you'll take a look at this paragraph, it states, COVID-19 lockdowns may be gradually easing, but anxiety about the world's social and economic prospect is only intensifying. There is good reason to worry. A sharp economic downturn has already begun, and we could be facing the worst depression since the 1930s. But, while this outcome is likely, it is not unavoidable. To achieve a better outcome, the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our society and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions. Every country, from the United States to China, must participate. and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism.
As I mentioned once before, a great number of information is flying at me. And if you'll notice, a small little window from Facebook popped up because I just so happened to have received another video yet again, somewhat lengthy in nature, 45 minutes long, but is discussing much of this pandemic issue and how it plays in to the world economic construct. There is this desire to reimagine the entire world, and you're seeing it directly from the World Economic Forum. You're not seeing it from the United Nations, it's the World Economic Forum. These are multi-billionaires and people of influence on that level that are dealing with this, and they are using the pandemic for this purpose. We need to keep watching. I'm reminded of the very, very, very first video I did when we started this. I was out in the back of my property, and I decided to videotape just a small little clip that would be apropos for this series. And I said, "There's a storm brewing. Are you watching?" And I didn't realize, quite frankly, how big this storm was going to be. I know we say 2020 was a very bad year. I think 2021 is going to be worse. I would like to be 150% wrong, but I think 2021 is going to be really bad. And I think that we are going to want to be rooted and grounded in the Word, and I think that we're going to want to take every opportunity to be able to share our faith and express our devotion to Christ by our commitment to Him. And I think the world sees that what is taking place is not a matter of right or wrong, but it's a matter of evil versus righteous. It's a matter of light versus dark. It's a matter of God versus Satan. The world sees it as such. If you're not following along with what's taking place right now, you will hear on a regular basis people saying, "Let's pray. We need to pray. We need to pray and fast." And I'm not talking about your pastor or the group of Christians that you hang out with. I'm talking about people that are leading marches, leading gatherings on a mass scale where tens of thousands of people are present. People that are opening up from a political standpoint and recognizing the fact that this situation is far worse than just a few rogue individuals going off of the reservation. It is far, far worse than that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out by allowing Senator Mark Kincham, I believe it is, from the state of Arizona. And he will close this video out, and you will hear his perspective as they come to a conclusion on having a hearing on the inappropriate behavior that occurred regarding the November 3rd vote, general election vote in Arizona.
But ladies and gentlemen, this is a skirmish. You ain't seen nothing yet, because when Satan wants to extinguish a light, he will stop at nothing. So be on your guard, put on the full armor of God, and be prepared to fight. Thank you.